give it 1 second to boot up and then we can begin.
Ready?
Okay, YouTube stream is now live, so we are able to start.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Thursday, September 4th Airport Commission meeting. We will start with a roll call.
Sure, Commissioner Schwartz.
I am here.
Commissioner Jackson.
He's muted, but here.
Commissioner Young.
I'm here.
Commissioner Randall.
Here.
Commissioner Nye.
Here.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum.
I'm here.
All right, thank you very much. Start off with proof of posting. Have we, Brian, have we posted our notice?
Yes, we have.
Okay, thank you very much. And next, we can start out with public comment. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. Just raise your hand if you would like to speak, and we'll get that acknowledged. And I'll get a timer out here just in case. And do we have anybody?
Yes, Mr. Kevin Spitzer's hand is up.
Okay. Kevin, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Kevin Spittler. I live at 6848 Frank Lloyd Wright. Some of you are rather new members to the commission, and I just want to introduce myself as someone who lives in the community and also leads a group of local climate activists affiliated with the international 350.org and our state chapter 350wisconsin.org. We educate and advocate for climate measures within our community, including the city and the Middleton Cross Plains Area School District. We often find that the city and the school district staff, plus many elected leaders, committees, and school board members are unfamiliar with the sustainability and climate-related resolutions that were enacted in previous years. And we strive to remind you all of these shared community goals and values, plus hold you accountable to them. Because we noticed this evening's agenda item related to electric aircraft and charging infrastructure, I am just providing a few reminders that the city does have a 100% clean energy resolution passed in 2018 that established specific citywide benchmarks for moving to clean renewable energy sources and phasing out fossil fuel use, related emissions by specific percentages and timeframes. We are expecting that the airport will do its part to help in meeting these worthy goals. This will and cannot happen overnight, but if carefully planned and coordinated, the steps taken to reach our city and school district objectives can put Middleton on the forefront of a new era of aviation and innovation, particularly for small private aircraft. Establishing an electric capability in Middleton sooner than later will draw the type of cleaner and quieter operations that can be a magnet for the aviators of the future, better assure the airport's future, also while reducing and maybe eventually eliminating most noise and emissions. Perhaps you saw the segment on CBS a couple of weeks ago about the 6-seater all-electric plane that has been developed by Beta Technologies of Burlington, Vermont. And they also mentioned many other companies that are doing the same thing, but it will not need a runway, but just an airspace and a charging capability. And that should be one of the first efforts that Middleton considers, as we think Middleton would be a charging stop for many of the future E-planes that will be traveling to and from EAA very soon. So I'd like to also say that Bob Owen, or Robert Owen Jr., who has communicated some of his thoughts with various members of the commission, has some very good ideas how to go about doing this. And I would ask you to carefully consider them. Finally, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to make these comments, and please know that we appreciate your service to our community.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate your comments tonight. Fantastic. Anybody else have a hand raised, Brian?
I don't see anybody else that has their virtual hand or physical hand raised at this point.
Okay. Well, we will then move on to our next item, and it looks like approval of the minutes. I did review the minutes from August 1st. I didn't have any comments. I accept them as they're submitted. Commissioners, if you have any comments, corrections, or submissions, let us know now, and that can be adjusted. Okay,
Nothing here.
thank you much. All righty. Moving on. Chair report. Well, I'd really like to start out by first thanking the mayor and those who supported the August proclamation for General Aviation Appreciation Month. And that got me thinking, Brian, can I get a nice copy of that? I'll get it framed and I'll drop it off at the airport if it can be done. If not, I don't know. If we don't do that, then so be it. That was my only thought. I really appreciate that. As you know, I've sort of been keeping an eye on unleaded fuel and just what's going on behind the scenes, and not a whole lot has really changed since my last update, other than California has introduced some legislation to, shall we say, move the needle on that part of the country. Looking at it, the timing really is basically forcing California locally to follow the already stated deadline that the Fed has made. I think it's, who knows what the implication is, but that was just my thoughts, and probably it's, maybe they're thinking if the Fed decides to change the needle, then California won't on that movement gauge. But that's all I really kind of saw that was going on out there. Rich did, that's it for my piece. Rich is not here yet, so he asked that I read his report. And let me just scroll down to it. Rich's manager report for August states that from July 25th to August 28th, 7 individuals made a total of 10 noise or low-flying aircraft reports. 1 individual made 4 of the 10 reports. Rich responded to all those who wished response. No violations of FAA regulations were apparent in the report. Wisconsin Aviation flight director was contacted about a low flight, and it was one of their aircraft. And that has been, shall we say, corrected through training and remediation. And all other individuals who requested a follow-up were contacted. There have been no aircraft incidents reported in his report as this type. Maintenance, he's giving a date here, and we'll obviously discuss it later in our agenda item, but the crack ceiling is scheduled for September 22nd. Other news, events going on. Four Lakes chapter of Women in Aviation held their monthly meeting in the conference room. EA chapter 93 VMC Club met in the conference room this in August. Capital Flight Cruising was held on August 10th. I was out there, and there were some other folks from the community out there. It looked like it was well attended and enjoyed by all. EA chapter 93 met in the conference room on the 15th, and that was a safety presentation presented by Rich. And an FAA seminar was held also in the conference room on the 22nd. Topic was flying for charities. And yeah, Willa Brown also hosted a fly-in on August 24th. Future events are scheduled for September 26th and October 24th, safety seminars. And I also believe there is a Young Eagles event scheduled for September, and maybe another Willa Brown that might be also in October. He doesn't have it here, but I happen to recall that. I don't have anything else to add to Rich's report. Brian, if you had anything else you wanted to add, go ahead.
Nope, nope, Rich's report was what he gave me, so.
Okay, great, thank you.
David,
So yes,
I
Jack?
said, I don't know if we'll cover off on this later in the agenda with the crack sealing discussion. I don't know if there are closures or schedules associated with the crack sealing work.
No information has been given to me, but I think it's safe to discuss this as part of the manager report. Rich will Rich will obviously issue a NOTAM and things like that to aviators when he gets dates, more specific in that sense. I know it's more along the lines of issuing a NOTAM and that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. If we'd want Rich to do more in a proactive sense, I don't see any reason why we just can't ask him to simply do that.
Well, I'm asking for the community. The aviators are going to want to know, but also for me personally, it's going to affect, for planned travel that week.
Yeah. I can send an email to Rich and I'll ask him to send an email out. He has a distribution list of hangar owners, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll make a note and I'll just ask Rich to be proactive as possible in communicating that to hangar owners.
Yeah, and real briefly, David.
Yes.
There was an email that went out from either Rich or Debbie to the listed hangar owners. I don't have it in front of me, but it did have some tentative dates in it. So we can either have him republish that, and it wasn't a final date, but it was a whole listing of all the area airports and their scheduled dates for this to occur. And it did include the dates for Maury, and it did indicate a 1 week closure, a likely 1 week closure of the runway as a result of this. And again, I don't have that email in front of me, so I don't have the date, but it did go out.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's probably a good idea to send it again because you caught it and others didn't. And that's a good way to do it. Great.
Chair, can I maybe suggest that we move to item number 1 under discussion, the update and discussion on crack seal project? I've asked Ryan Felch from SEH, who's one of our contractors working on the project, to be here tonight just to give an update and answer any questions on the project that's scheduled for the 22nd. So
okay,
you can turn things over to Ryan for any comments he might have.
Sure. So then we'll move. Let's just move the crack sealing up to item number 1.
Oh, good. Well, good evening. I appreciate you guys taking the time. So yeah, I'm Ryan Fulch. I'm with SEH. So we work hand in hand with the Bureau of Aeronautics on this program. We've been kind of managing it from the design aspect and now on the construction side. So yes, the email I sent it out this afternoon with a tentative schedule. So we've been getting schedule updates from the contractor, who is Farner Asphalt Sealers. They're the ones that were awarded the contract and who are doing the work. So they've been sharing updates with us weekly as the weather permits. So it's been it changes weekly. It's pretty crazy how much it changes. But right now, Maury Field is scheduled for the week of October 6th. I anticipate that may shift somewhat, but it looks like they are anticipating that work to take, it looks like from their schedule, about 7 days or so. So normally what we've been doing with some of the airports that have already started is at SCH will generate a construction notice the week beforehand. Once we kind of have that schedule pinned down, we know like, hey, it's going to happen this week. We provide that to the airport, so we'll send that to Rich, or hopefully he will distribute that to the tenants and users alike ahead of time. Kind of say, hey, this is going to be happening this week. Be prepared for closures. Be on the lookout for NOTAMs. It will change probably daily because the contractor is going to work kind of like stage its way through the airport, so we're not closing it all at once. So we might work on a portion of taxiway A, work on another portion of it, and then maybe do the runway at once. So it's kind of piecemeal together, so we can try to keep the airport open as long as we can. So normally what we've been doing is meeting with the airport at the onset that morning, kind of come up with a game plan, what kind of schedule impacts you guys may have, and then kind of pivot and work around that as best we can. But then we kind of let Rich know, like, hey, here's our cemented schedule. If the weather holds up, this is what we're going to do. But normally that's what we've been doing. But again, Mother Nature's been driving a lot of our schedule. But we try to coordinate as best we can. So I know there's a lot of talk about NOTAMs, but we'll get as much notice we can to Rich so he can get those out for you guys to kind of adjust your travel schedules as needed. I guess I'll open up any questions of generic on the program itself.
Sure.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Dave.
yeah, you mentioned October 6th and the potential that date is in flux. Would there be any occurrence where it would be before the week of October 6th?
Let me see. So I do not believe so, based on what I'm seeing with the schedule. So the contractors different regions, their crack filling crews work at. So you guys are one crew that kind of handles this whole area. And I believe they're going to Iowa for 2 weeks beforehand. So I don't know if it's going to shift forward anymore. It might only go back, to my knowledge.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions?
Yes, this is Alden Jackson. I know you had said it would take 7 days, but then you said, you work according to Mother Nature and the weather. With the weather changes, do you foresee it being over 7 days of this happening?
I would probably bet it might be. When we're getting to October, I think there might be it might extend. They might have to work a half day here, half day there. So I guess best bet. I mean, they're just showing in their schedule 7 days, but I think it could go longer at 7. That might be a fair guess.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Yeah, and for everyone's knowledge, like we'll be on site too daily to hopefully help minimize the disruptions and help with that coordination for Rich. Just kind of have that extra hands-on technique with the contractors, make sure they're not doing anything out of the ordinary. So we'll be on site full time to help manage that as well.
So it'll be a 7-day process, but we won't necessarily be closing the runway down for 7 days. It'll just be rerouting taxi traffic. Pilots may have to do some back taxi work and some things like that just to kind of get around it.
Bingo. Yep, exactly.
So maybe for pilots, that where their hangar is, boxed in by just one taxiway out, that will really impact them. So they may not have any movement capabilities just during that time.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Once they won't be closed at night, we'll just open it back up. They can drive on pretty quickly depending on hopefully it's cooler temperatures at that time. So you should be able to drive over top of it and not create any damage whatsoever. So the cure time of the material is pretty fast.
Gotcha. Okay. Brian, anything else as part of this discussion?
Nope, just as Mr. Felch mentioned, we'll provide information as we received it about the project schedule, and we'll put that on the city's website, but also materially at the airport as well.
Okay. Ready? Okay, well, going once, going twice. Crack ceiling questions, discussions. Brian, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Brian, should we now moving on to item number 2, Sasso.
Yeah, item number 2 is review and consideration and potential action on a request from Sark Fleet Academy LLC for approval of a special aviation operations agreement, or SASO, to provide a small flight lesson operations at the Middleton Municipal Airport. This is a request we received from Mr. Russell Snark to operate a small flight school. So I put together a draft for consideration of the Airport Commission, and Mr. Stark is here for you to ask any questions about his proposal, or anything, background, aviation, those type of questions. And then there's a draft agreement for your consideration if that's the direction you wish to go.
Okay. As the city, in terms of, what you have to do on your end, due diligence, do you feel that you've done everything on your end in terms of?
I'll be candid, this is kind of a unique item. We don't get requests for SASOs that often. Did kind of some research at the FAA in the pilots database. Mr. Stark came back with the qualifications for certified flight instructor. So he has those credentials in the FAA database. I didn't see any violations or other items in that database, but Mr. Stark, you can ask that question to Mr. Stark as well. As far as from an FAA standpoint, I think I looked in all the different databases that I could and didn't see anything that would be of note other than his licenses. But happy to do any other additional research that the commission would direct.
Mhm. I guess one of my questions would be, does the city do any kind of background checking, with police department or anything that would come up on their kind of radar when we're asking people to take on operations and things like that at the airport?
That would have to be a directive of the airport commission to do that. There isn't anything, because this is such a specialized request, there isn't anything in our, existing policies or anything that would trigger that. So if that's something you'd like us to do, we could do that, but I couldn't find anything in the BOA requirements that would trigger that. But if that's your direction, as any sort of condition of approval or anything like that, would be happy to do that.
Mhm, mhm. Commissioners, thoughts, comments regarding review of this? Brian Hamilton.
I just had a quick question on it says hours of operation. That's on page 8, section 8, and maybe Mr. Stark can answer this too. It says operator agrees to maintain operations during scheduled hours, normally 8 hours per day, and there's nothing in there that mentions about, is there a certain number of days a week that's going to occur, and if so, is that something that should be included in the agreement?
This is our standard SASO template, so I'm not sure for other, I mean, this would be the language we've used for other SASO operations at the airport. If there were some specifics related to this operation that you wanted to clarify, you could do that in any sort of contingencies approval or something like that. That would probably be the best way to address that.
Okay.
Brian, do you think it's just something that was put in there more generic in that sense, just,
Yeah, I mean, this template is from, predates my time with the city, but I know we've used it maybe in the last 5+ years. So yeah, my best guess is going to be, kind of general language about that.
Okay. I see Jack Young has his hand up.
Yeah, I guess 2 comments, just following up on the background. And so, the FAA does to become a CFII, I think I don't know what we would add and on top of what they would require from a currency and background and health and I guess compliance perspective. So I'm not sure that there'd be a role for us in that. I'd be curious what other airports do in these situations. I guess the other general question I had, I didn't read the lease super detailed. It's similar, I think, to the one that we had for Capital Flight, but yeah, I don't have any objection to providing additional services or allowing qualified individuals to provide additional services. I'm sure Mr. Stark will be a great neighbor, but if there's a subsequent thing or an issue, somebody continues to violate the departure procedures, recommendations, or is operating at funny hours on a regular basis, who has the the mantle to enforce, I guess, what's proper at the airport? How is that handled?
So all the SASO operators do have to adhere to minimum aviation standards. So if there was a situation where that wasn't occurring, that would be when the conversation would happen with that operator. And if it would continue over the course of time, then there are some language for defaults in the contract where that would have to be remedied by the operator, or they would cease to have the ability to conduct business at the airport. So that would probably be the way to address that.
I'm sorry, Brian, and that's Rich that's conducting those, or Maury Airport Company that's conducting those conversations?
It would be Rich as the airport manager for that, and then if it rises to a level where there are multiple breaches, then likely get city attorney involved in something like that.
Got it. I was just curious if the airport manager had ultimate oversight on all of that.
Commissioners, any other questions?
Would you like a brief synopsis of what I intend to do?
Oh, just a second. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Well, look, go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, I had more technical, kind of looking at minimum standards when I was looking at our city website. Apparently there was a revision, in April 2019 to the minimum standards. When you link on the website to go access those, it's like the page, evil page not found kind of thing. But I think more because it says the city is working on an ordinance. So the standards that are accessible from the city website are the ones from, I think, December of 2013, I believe. And I'm just wondering, are there significant, it sounded like there were some substantive changes between the two. I just don't have access to the current minimum standards. I just had more questions about, the structural minimum standards, and maybe Mr. Stark will be identifying, that piece of it, but there were things like, hangar space and, just my basic knowledge of what facilities meet the minimum standards, at least that were available from the 2013 ones. There's, just a few spots on the airport where that's possible. So I just had questions about that, and also for Brian, like how we could have access to the minimum standards that I'm sure Mr. Stark or anybody else would have to meet.
Yeah, so I noticed that same issue with the website, so I'm trying to figure out
Mhm.
why that's not linking and trying to get that resolved. So once we can figure that out, we'll get that link prepared and so that it's available.
Okay.
Got it. Okay. Let's see if anybody else has their hand up here. I'll just throw these comment out here, and then Mr. Stark can speak. When I went through the SASO, there's some things in there talk about notice, section number 21, notice posting compliance. What I noticed in there was it sort of implies that a business operating out there kind of has a space where they would post notices, post information, post things to their students and staff regarding their ability to operate as a business, and kind of like any business environment where you have a notification board in an office that states what the business services are, what the business expectations are, and things like that. And I'm just wondering if how a business operates at the airport in this kind of capacity without really a hangar or a space to use as a base of operation.
Well, there would be the opportunities to rent either tie down space or potentially rent space in a hangar. So that would be, it's my understanding, Mr. Stark's desire to to rent either tie down space, or if there was space available for rent
Okay.
in an existing hangar, that would be his desire.
Mhm. So from a city standpoint, you don't see any conditions around that. So a person can, you're comfortable with a person operating at the airport without hangar space, office space, or renting office space, finding office space, just.
Well, I mean, I think they should have some place to, for lack of a better term, secure the aircraft. So whether it's renting a tie down space or hangar space, that would need to be a requirement of any sort of SASO, in my opinion.
Mhm. Um,
I think Dave, were you trying to clarify like having a base of operations that like a potential customer could walk into and like speak to somebody or see postings? Is that what you were referring to?
yeah, it just in the SASO, it states that the business operator will actually post notices and information to their staff and employees regarding um, even things along the lines of fair labor practices and notices. It's okay. What section is it in? Let me scroll down to it. I think it's number 5. For some reason it fell off my notes. It's not the insurance. I had some questions there. Yeah, it's section 5, paragraph C. Operator shall keep in effect and post in a prominent place all necessary and or required licenses, certificates, and permits. So what I'm sort of interpreting here is if you have an office or a place to operate out of and somebody shows up, it could be anybody in an official capacity and says, okay, show us your documents. Do you have an office? Or if someone walks in and asks for things, are these things readily available? Can these types of things be addressed? It just seems like when you have a business or a base of operation, you sort of have an administrative capacity and a place to kind of carry out some of this kind of stuff. I know in most work environments and places, you actually have to have a little bulletin board that states business practices, fair practices, and things like that. That's just kind of what I was thinking along. Kari, your hand is still up too when Lindsay's done.
Yeah. Oh, Lindsay, are you done? Yeah, well, that's what kind of bringing me back to like their minimum standards, but clearly I have access only to an older copy. Like in the older minimum standards did have a requirement. That was actually the first one for a physical space and a specific amount of square feet and office and things like that. I obviously I don't have all the complete information, but that would seem to be that's part of the requirement of the SASO to meet the minimum standards that were approved in 2019. I just would need to have access to that, and of course, Mr. Stark would too, so he can make sure that he's covered all of those. I just don't have that information for him to be able to share those pieces of the steps that he's taken so far.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm thinking is, or seeing is, obviously we want business and we want to promote business at the airport, but if it's going to operate at the airport, we want it to reflect well on the city of Middleton. We want it to reflect in the sense of being professional, organized, things like that. Because if our airport is going to be advertised as a base of operation for a place to conduct business, then when somebody, does show up, there is that sense of professionalism and a base to operate out of.
Right. And obviously, when Capital Flight applied for their SASO, they had to meet all of these requirements to do that. So that's just what I wanted to have access to see what did Capital Flight have to comply with in order to open their business. And obviously that's what I guess Mr. Stark would be facing that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think about there's other aviation related services out at the airport, and they lease a space, and so it allows just a business to operate that way. I think there's some AME out there that some medical examiners share a space. I believe Willa Brown is renting a space. And I know there's a business that does, it's an aviation component, but it does some kind of aerial, high-tech aerial analysis. Can't even get my head around the technology. They've had some fascinating equipment out there that I guess can do some high resolution scanning of the ground.
Would it be potentially helpful to hear what Mr. Stark has in mind?
Yes.
To see what maybe he's already anticipated questions for?
Yep, go ahead, Mr. Stark.
Hi, thanks for the invite. Okay, first of all, I'm an ex-retired airline pilot, and I also currently fly corporate CRJ 200. So my intention is basically I'm retiring to Madison. So I grew up in Green Bay. I went to the university in Madison. I got a degree out of Kenosha. I finished up my 4-year aeronautical out of Prescott, Arizona for Embry-Riddle. So I've been teaching. I've been flying since I was 18, and I just turned 67. So I retired as an airline pilot at 65. But I taught in the simulators and ground school for the airline as well. It was a subsidiary of Delta. So I was in Dallas during the company that I worked for closed in 2012. And then I kind of got out of aviation for a while. And after COVID or during COVID, I actually started up a stretch limousine company out of Cincinnati, party buses, stretch limos and such. By the end of COVID, I ran that for about 6 years through the end of COVID. And then I closed that and I had moved to Dallas. And I started a flying school out of Dallas Executive Airport. So I was operating out of one of their FBOs. And the way I was authorized was I rented a space from the FBO for the airplane hangar. I used the facilities inside the FBO. It was very nice. It was Ambassador Jet Center. And my business administration is home-based. I can rent a space. I don't know that there is any space available inside that FBO. I know that Rich kind of uses the entire space for his school. So I've never really pinpointed where exactly is his school office to have all of those federal signs up for the workers. But my intention is to administratively take care of starting students through my home-based. And what I need to operate is a tie down and or a hangar space. Everybody would be invited in. We would not necessarily have anybody coming in off the streets. The way the aviation schools operate under Part 6191, which is what Rich's company is and mine, is that students will call first, make appointments. I'm very customer service driven, so they are very familiar with what's going to happen before they show up. They're always escorted with somebody, with an instructor or with me. My intention is only to have 2, maybe 3 airplanes. 2 is more likely. When one is down, I have a spare. I personally own an airplane that I would like to bring up from Dallas. I do want to base it there. The issue is the winter months. Where can I put it during those January, February, March, and April? I did speak to Rich when I first got here. By the way, I did work for Rich. That did not go well. So he and I discussed renting hangar space in his group hangar. But in the meantime, I started looking at who else was available. So I just need storage for an airplane or 2. The flight line is okay. There are plenty of spaces for the flight line. We would only use the facilities, the group room for pre-flight discussions and post-flight. Everything else will be done administratively prior to them ever arriving. So rarely, if ever, would I have anybody just coming in off the street looking around for Starfleet Academy. It would all be by appointment only.
Does anybody else have any more questions or thoughts?
I guess just a quick question for this when you are first starting out here, Mr. Stark, are you intending to be, I'm assuming the primary flight instructor, and then looking in the future to potentially bring on additional flight instructors? Is that kind of the plan?
That is correct, yes. I'm not expecting a large fleet. This is kind of my retirement gig. I can't fly jetliners all of my life. At some point, I do need to slow down a little bit. And my intention is to continue teaching until I can't pass a medical anymore. So what I do is I hire 1 or 2 instructors. And between the 3 of us, we usually keep 1 airplane running. It is available 7 days a week. My Dallas operation was 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The FBO, however, was open from 6 a.m. to 10. And of course, students do need to fly at night. So we would be doing that kind of stuff just like Maury does. So that really is the operation. It's nothing significant. And it's just to employ a few instructors so they can build their flight time and go off to the airlines and do their thing. That's the way I started. That's where most of them go after that. And so having many more than 2 or 3 is not my idea of what I want to do for my retirement. So I want to keep it small, keep it customer service driven, and just provide a good service.
How long were you working for Maury as an instructor?
4 months.
Okay.
And it did not end well.
Gotcha. Brian, just keep me on the rails here. What if, I mean, how are you going to work that out? Being in the same space and place.
Well, we both have to pull up our big boy pants. It had nothing to do with my performance as his employee. He just did not like me wanting to bring my airplane up to Dallas, up from Dallas, and basing it there. He knew I wanted to teach. He knew that I wanted to bring my airplane up. And he couldn't he would pry into my personal business about how I was going to do that. And I was polite to him. I've always been polite to him. And I advised him, please, if you want to discuss my personal school operation, please put it in an email. Let's have some document, a document trail, so what I can address it. I don't want this to interfere with my teaching position. And he didn't like that response. And he said, you can either resign now or you're terminated.
Gotcha. Well, were you, when you were working with him, were you, like teaching any, doing any training or teaching of students outside of his business while you were working for him?
No, I was using his airplanes. Rich never gave me any students, and I was a W-2 employee. So Rich never gave me any students, and I had 3 students, and I brought them in from the outside. They contacted me, or they had heard about me, and they contacted me, and I brought them into Rich's office. And they flew as Rich's students under my direction.
Gotcha. Alder Jackson has a question. Go ahead. You're off mute.
Yes, not so much of a question, just hearing everything out. And I mean, I'm just gonna put this out there. I mean, commission can follow, not follow. There was questions about the standards being met according to the SOS. There was questions about there's just a lot of open-ended questions. There's a lot of, for me, there's a lot of unanswered questions. And then now hearing the tail end part of this, of the relationship with Rich, I would ask that we table this decision. If there's, Brian, I don't know if there's a decision that be made tonight, but that we table it until the city further investigates this relationship, the standards, until I think one of the commissioners had brought up she hadn't seen the standards, that the standards be looked over by herself as well as Stark, and that we just don't make any decision right now. We table it until we can get more clarity. A lot of the open-ended questions be answered, and we just come back and revisit it further down the line.
Thank you. And I would say, the past year, security and things like that are become a sensitive issue around the airport. Brian, you might have to check with city attorney, but would the city be willing to do a little bit more of a background check on the security side things as well?
Yes, I mean, so if your direction is to table the item and ask for some additional research on topics, including, additional background, we're happy to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that might be a reasonable route to go. I don't want to get into, because obviously the commission doesn't know the history and background here. But, kind of get into a back and forth. It wouldn't be fair to Mr. Stark for us to turn into an inquisition committee as opposed to a commission.
I do welcome any questions though about it.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I would like some guidance from the city, because there's probably questions that maybe the city could just ask you and have that conversation. And, the commission shouldn't dive too deeply into. Oh, Rich is online. Just in all fairness to everybody. And as Alder Jackson recommended, tabling it. So tabling it doesn't mean no. Tabling it, all it means is tabling's a good thing. Tabling doesn't stop or end anything. Tabling does, we'll just let the city gather some more information, maybe have some direct conversations with you, maybe even, and then I'll let Rich speak here, and then with Rich, and then just bring it back. Rich, go ahead.
Hey, am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Okay, very good. Again, what's on the city's website apparently are the outdated minimum standards. New minimum standards were written along the lines to clarify things for capital flight. So it seems to me that we need to get those documents if they're not in hand. The ones I have came off the city website through the link that Brian provided, and look at what's actually required by the contract. I would certainly not want to see us drop or lower these minimum standards. They're part of what the operation is out here and what it should be. And there was about a year and a half, 2-year project with Mark Opitz writing these to update them and get them to standard. So I would say let's review those, find the current ones, and then see if anyone who wants to operate out here going forward will meet those minimum standards.
Okay. Yeah, and I was just going to say, Kara already spoke to that. Go ahead, Kara, please.
Yeah, that's exactly I was attempting to articulate earlier, just so we all have clarity and we're all on the same playing field about what it takes to do that. That was why I spoke before Mr. Stark did, because I just wanted to, like, there's some confusion, at least on my end, because I didn't have access to what those minimum standards were. And I also, agree with Alder Jackson that tabling seems like a very appropriate thing while we're doing our research and putting pieces together.
Okay, great. So Brian, let's review kind of a list. Sorry to add to your workload, but I think it's prudent. As he gathers his list.
Okay, so why don't you provide again what your kind of direction is going to be, and if there's going to be a motion to proceed.
Yeah. Okay. So let's, if you would check with the police department, do a background check as they can. I think it would be good to have you, Rich, and Mr. Stark have a meeting. I think some questions need to be answered regarding if there was, any operation taking place in parallel as he, while he was working with Rich. That raises some questions as to ethics. And then, as Kara already stated, let's check with current standards that are, I guess, in place for capital flight. And Maury. I also liability insurance, and I'm glad Rich is here. What are the standards for liability? His insurance is listed there. Rich, go ahead.
Okay, just a clarification, the minimum standards are just that, the minimum standards. The operating agreements that any SASO or FBO negotiate with the city are based on that, the minimum, and then whatever the city and the operator come to terms on. So they're not, you can look at my contract, you can look at capital flights, but the minimum standards, there's everything in here, as you can see by reviewing it, for any operation. If we had someone who wanted to lease the old high site hangar right now and put an avionics shop in there, there's standards that have to be met. Same for maintenance, same for anything else. So these are for the airport. There are highly encouraged, if not required, by the FAA for us for our grant assurances. And they reflect the state and federal laws and the city's requirements. So minimum standards as they are set are for any operator that wants to come out here. This is to avoid people who want to just park an airplane on the ramp and start running a flight school. They have to have an agreement. As per the insurance requirements, we need, all of our students have to have a minimum of $100,000 liability, of which the city is named. We need to operate as a flight school $1 million worth of liability, which the city is also listed as co-insured. On that, it was 5 million, but the market, it is essentially impossible to buy that coverage right now. So the city has worked with us and to reflect the realities of what's out there. So those are, to my understanding, that's what we need. Of course, we need additional insurance for our fueling, and the charter is covered under a separate policy as well.
Gotcha. So Mr. Stark's insurance that's presented here tonight meets those standards because that's all the industry is going to offer as $1 million cap per incident. Looks like. Okay. All right. Okay, Brian, let's summarize that and then.
Looks like David has a hand
Oh,
up.
I'm sorry. I didn't see the electronic hand. Sorry, Dave.
Yeah, no, just a comment for further inquiry, I guess. This is neither a yay nor a nay as to the proposition from Mr. Stark, but I'm just wondering, I heard in Mr. Stark's presentation use of the FBO conference room for bringing students in, and that's not inappropriate, I would think, but I just wonder at what point do we need to also consider some sort of scheduling system for use of that conference room. Maybe this isn't intensive enough to require anything more than already exists, but as we add layers, and this is a layer of using that conference room, and I just wonder if at some point in time there's going to be competing and conflicting interest for use of that conference room. Again, that's not in favor or against the proposal. It's just a thought that we might need to incorporate some sort of scheduling manner related to that. Just that comment, perhaps for follow-up.
Sure, I think Rich can speak as to how that conference room is allocated. Go ahead, Rich.
Yes, David, that's a very good point. Now, Maury Airplane Company leases the entire building from Middleton Area Development Corporation. So there is public use space here, the terminal, the lobby area, and we do allow groups to meet in the conference room. If they are for profit, they rent it. If they are not for profit, they do not rent it. We do not allow outside instructors to operate in the conference room. So the proposal there, since again, we're leasing the entire building, some of this is public space of which the city gives us a slight acknowledgement on our operating expenses. But again, this building is leased solely by Maury Airplane Company, and MADC wants us to use it as for aviation related purposes.
So the conference room is leased technically by Maury then as well?
Yes,
okay.
It is.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Learn something every day. Right. So the FBO in terms of, shall we say, a public space for aviators is you can come in the doors, you can walk in the lobby, you can use the restroom, and you can leave.
Mm-hmm. Now, on occasion, someone will be doing recurrent training. Was a client out here, and they've got people that obviously have qualifications that we do not have for, let's say, jets or turboprop aircraft, and then the room is used. We also allow the examiners, of course, to use that room and/or offices that are vacant. But again, I do not I've had situations where a Wisconsin aviation instructor would come over here and want to give ground school in that office, and that was not allowed.
Sure. Got it. Okay. All right, then motion. I'll make a motion. We table the SASO review at this time for a city follow-up on the questions as presented. And that will include, Brian, did you draft that out, the notes?
Yeah.
Let's go over it.
Before additional police department background check on the applicant, additional conversation between the applicant, airport manager, and city representatives on operations for Mr. Stark, verification of the most current version of the minimum standards document, and then just verification that the liability insurance meets those minimum standards.
Commissioners, any other thoughts? Okay, so that's the motion in front of us. Do I have a second?
This is Jackson. I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. We do have some discussion, which is fine. Go ahead, Cara.
On the insurance, I'm sure this probably umbrella covers it liability, but it's more than just aircraft insurance, like it's comprehensive. I just noticed that the insurance that Mr. Stark provided was just basically for the aircraft. So once we see the minimum standards and what they require, I know that's a lot more extensive than just that. So the insurance piece of it, I know, is pretty crucial, and there's multiple areas that need to be covered.
Okay, and that will be part of the dialogue. The city will do some more background on for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just for clarification, the $1 million liability is, again, not just for the aircraft, it is for the flight instructors as well. For any instructor that operates out of here to meet minimum standards needs to have $1 million of their liability for as a flight instructor, again, which the city is co-insured under.
Okay. All those in favor as the motion is presented? Say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thanks. To be revisited in the future. Next, item number 3, UL FAQ. This has been brought back to the commission at the recommendation of commission member to review some of the language. And I will start off with asking Dave to please take the mic.
Sure. Well, first of all, I raised an issue about maybe adding something or enhancing the FAQ that we already have. I think the FAQ that we have, and the FAQ essentially relates to the unleaded fuel issue. And I think the FAQ that we have is excellent. But I also note that we have been getting regular comments about pressing this issue of getting to unleaded fuel and other alternatives to leaded fuel. And again, nothing wrong with that. But it just seems to me, when I combine that with what I have been reading on various sites about the status of getting us to unleaded fuel, it's really something that is very much out of our hands and out of our control. And I think that that is somewhat mentioned in the FAQs, that this is an FAA item, not a local Middleton or Maury airport issue. But I think it could be stated much more strongly And again, given that we regularly get comments about this, my view is that it would be important to add language that makes it abundantly clear that we, as the city of Middleton, as well as I'm sure Maury Airport Company, would be happy to and encourage getting to the point of unleaded fuel, but that it is something that is very much out of our control. It is an FAA issue. It's a industry development issue, and then it is a distribution issue. And each of those items are something entirely out of our control. And although briefly mentioned in the FAQs, I don't think that that's made as abundantly clear in the FAQs as the reality is. And so I'm suggesting that language be added to encompass those issues.
Looking through commissioners here for any thoughts or comments. I agree. And I was looking at these and wondering if we need to either adjust the language in one of them or simply add another question to the series. So I get it. I see where you're going with it. And we just want to make that clear that the city of Middleton is not driving this. Okay, here we go. Kara, go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely agree with David. And maybe one approach would be, where you address like myths, and then you're like Mythbuster. And one of the myths that it, could be worded in such a way where it's a common understanding that this may be like we're dealing with auto fuel and that you have choice and you can, I don't know. I just think there could be another way to also grab attention to perceptions that may be misperceptions that we have more say than we do, and that absolutely make it clear the commitment that we're want to move this way, and if anything, be proactive to be ready to rock and roll when things are available for us in the city of Middleton.
Ryan Hamilton.
Well, I'll just, I concur with everything, and just maybe just something that just says maybe even as a header or just something that blatantly asks, well, what is the timeline, and just give, there's no specific date, but because I'm sure that's a standard question that people are like, well, when is this going to happen? And then, in saying the timeline approximately is the year such and such. That being said, however, then we get into the whys. It's not really in our control here. There's a lot of factors involved. So just some sort of timeline addition to the factors of why it's not in our control, really. So just a thought.
Yeah, when I looked at it, I looked at, it's really kind of number 10. So the question is, looking at the language of number 10, do we leave number 10 alone and do we add a number 11? Or do we change the wording of number 10? Because basically, it states where the EPA is at, states the Eagle Initiative. Yep, we got that. And then we're sort of saying as soon as the FAA has approved 100 UL fuel for fleet-wide distribution and is commercially available, this last bit of language has changed. It's really actually now becoming almost more ambiguous than it was before. And I'm just wondering, Dave, what your thoughts on that are, because we're not the ones who are saying we don't know.
My thoughts, and this may be consistent with something that I think I may have been hearing from Kara, a little bit, but and some others. But my thoughts are, again, since we are not the controlling body for what's going to happen here, that the head, I would prefer a number one or a header setting forth that this is not our call, and appropriate language, and but then go on and saying, despite the fact that it's not our call, here are all the things that we're doing and that we're recognizing and working towards. And so the header or the number one would be some sort of statement that this is not within the control of local authorities, including the city of Middleton, the Middleton Airport, or Maury Airport Company, but it's something that is entirely in the control of the Federal Aviation Administration, and that we're following all their rules and guidelines. And here are the efforts that we've made as soon as they come together with an appropriate, approved manufacturer and approved distribution source. Here is what we have done and are willing or prepared to charge ahead with as soon as that occurs. Now, that's more how I was viewing it.
Yeah, I like that. I'm looking at the website right now. So we've got UL FAQ, and then we've got they're called accordion panels for each one of them. So I think maybe the question is right underneath fuel FAQ. We add a text box, and that text box is that statement. So just right under the FAQ, we just simply add a box with a statement that will summarize what you just said. And then people can just look at the FAQ. So how would that work?
Well,
that's an easy enough thing for the director of communications to kind of wordsmith for us.
Yeah, if that's your direction, we'll put something together, and yeah, we can add a text box or shift down the FAQ questions and add a text box to add some language in front of that.
I like that. Commissioners, any more thoughts? You need any? Oh, Cara, hand raised.
Yeah, I think that's great. Having a statement, like a statement in the beginning that kind of gives the context of all of it, even almost the flow of how this happens. FAA on down, I don't know how exactly you would word that, but it lays out the picture, and then all of the questions fall underneath the umbrella of kind of that when it becomes possible for us to step into that.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. Brian, you don't need anything official from us?
Nope. We'll put something together, and whenever it's ready or for the next meeting, you can take a look at it and tell us if it's going the direction you wanted to, if you have additional changes for it.
Yeah. Okay. I can just state, personally, I scour the internet and read as much as I can on this, and I even try to get even a little technical with it. I started reading the STCs, and I wanted to even know, as a pilot, if you're running G100 UL, how does that affect your pre-flight? And it's interesting. It's stated right in it that your pre-flight is standard. So you still sump the airplane. You still run your fuel sumps to check for water. And that's very interesting. It tells, it kind of tips the hat as to the nature of the fuel. So water doesn't appear to get absorbed into it, which kind of means it has properties that are similar to fuel that may not have any type of ethanols blended into it. It's fascinating stuff. So don't get me going on it, because I'll go too far. Okay, thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. Okay, item number 4. This is kind of an ask on my part. I'd like to do the research on this and continue to eventually bring something down the road. No date and time, thinking very big here in terms of the future. But really think in terms of, is there grant development? Is there financial assistance for flight schools? Is there charging infrastructure? Is there keep an eye on monitoring what's going on at Oshkosh in the development of a vertiport? There's language now out at the FAA that talks about advanced air mobility, which really is the vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. And this is speaking to the comments at the beginning of the meeting. So the 2 companies right now that are in the latter stages of an airworthiness certification are Joby and Archer. And so these are 2 vertical takeoff and landing craft that, when it gets to this stage and certification is going to be a reality. It's how long that reality lasts, we don't know, but there are going to be flying vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. And the fact that Oshkosh is building a vertiport and that there's engineering firms out there now that are sort of making it available for airports to kind of look at these pre-made plans on this is what a vertiport looks like and this is what you can do at a vertiport. I think the question is, maybe it would be nice to have something, a little framework that we can give the city to just always think about. Because we just don't know what the future is going to be. And this was something that was never even in a conceptual standpoint of what the airport master plan is. Because these vertiports are obviously utilization of existing space at an airport, but nobody thought about creating a vertiport. Nobody thought about putting chargers on the ramp. So that's it. That's what I'm thinking, and I would like input from commissioners. And I see Kara's hand is raised.
Yeah, I'm just excited about this topic. And, of course, here we are, we don't know what we don't know, right? But we have an opportunity, at least as an airport commission, to start being a think tank and brainstorming and using our imagination, but also what is actually being accomplished so far to kind of be ahead of the game. And in some way, it reminds me of, like, I was born and raised here in Middleton, right on the Pheasant Branch Preserve. And it was Mayor Wally Bauman and my parents and a group of other people who were interested in cleaning up the creek and preserving it for future generations. So ingrained in my DNA was getting into the creek and cleaning it up and having a commission and a governmental body that was interested in the future, which they didn't really know what we're looking at now and how beautiful it is and what it's made accessible as a corridor. So I see us, also thinking ahead, what we can create now as possibilities, even if it goes a different direction in the industry, we're kind of creating an opening for 20 years, 40 years down the road. So I definitely think looking into this and getting, public feedback. I loved Kevin's input in the beginning of this public comment, and more people interested in directing that and supporting and doing research and looking for grants in particular. Like, there seems to be an awful lot of support on the federal level for things occurring in different airports and buildings. So staying in touch with that, I think, would be really important and getting ahead of it. So I'm all in favor of that.
Thank you. Rich. Oh, Rich disappeared. His hand was up.
There we go. The guy that bought the Betamax format, and then the world went to VHS.
That's right. It did.
I've been in this business a long time, and I love that, it's going to come. Eventually, it's going to get here. Whether the vertiport makes sense at the airport or just off the city center where most of the traffic will be for it, or something near a big parking lot, we don't know.
Right.
What charging formats, we don't know. I've been interviewed by Middleton Times Tribune on this, and I said, when the technology is there, much as when the 100 unleaded is there, then we have an option to do something. Oshkosh is a perfect test bed for experimental programs to see how things work. They're on the cutting edge of what is done up there. I don't know that the Middleton Municipal Airport has the backing and the wherewithal necessarily to jump ahead of the established technology. That's just my 2 cents worth on the subject. I'm certainly not against it. Certainly, if we can get funding to do something toward those lines, but I don't know that there's even a standardized charging format out there at the moment. Let alone, we're looking at electric gliders, electric, aircraft that are based on existing aircraft, and we're looking at a totally different quadcopter, 6-engine, 8-engine that are more drone-like. So I'm just not sure where we're going to go with all of this. I would urge caution, but on the other hand, I'm certainly not against looking at what's out there.
Yes, I agree, and that's really why I'm driving this. I don't want us to get locked into anything in any particular way, but I would want the city to always keep in mind, because the reality is us politicians and commission members will come and go. But if the city has a commitment to always keeping an eye on things, the city has staff members right now, their job is to write grants, to find grants and to find money for sustainability. And so we have access to people who have knowledge and skill. I'm not at all proposing that we ask that person today to sit down and write a grant. I'm just want it to be in the mindset that we have this space. We don't know what the future is going to be, but we know the future is going to be different than it is right now. If as things move forward, maybe as the city starts having to replace equipment, there's going to be more electrification to it. So if equipment like that ends up out at the airport, that is necessary for the city to maintain the airport, and we see kind of a hand-in-hand opportunity, someone should just kind of remember that. Go, oh, that's right. Here's an opportunity. So I'm just throwing, casting a very broad net in that arena. Yes, out in California, there is a flight school. They have a small fleet of the electric Pipistrel, and that's impressive. But it's California. It's not Wisconsin, where the airplane can't sit outside in the cold of winter. The battery systems will fail. The airplane will not be functional. They're composite, exotic material aircraft. You're talking about a lot of hangar space to keep them safe and protected. Yeah, it's we're comparing apples to oranges. Now, if that technology obviously becomes affordable and practical and reasonable, it might be, but that might be 20 years from now. It's not going to be 5 years from now or 10 years from now, until there's some fundamental breakthroughs in storage technology and some things like that. So that's where I'm at. Okay, well, thank you. I'll work on something, some language, a statement. It'll be the airport's proclamation to the city. Okay, well, thank you very much. On to review and acceptance of our financials. Brian.
Yes, thank you. So I've got the financials up on the screen. Again, as with most months, not a lot of movement in the budget, on a monthly basis. Just a couple sources of funding coming in, just a couple of items going out, and again, some of the way that the billing for some things work, some things will show up, a month later. So, as we continue to go through the year, we'll update the sheet and let you know if there's any items of note or variance. But as for the month of August, nothing of note from the finance department.
Yep, I'm seeing here too. Okay. Okay, Brian, do you have any future agenda items or anything at this time?
One future agenda item that I don't quite know when it will be scheduled yet, likely before the end of this year. We will talked about this before. We will be doing a separate Bureau of Aeronautics petition process to add a couple of the items that were not in our 2023 item. So that the AWOS system that we've mentioned before. I also think that kind of given our conversations tonight in the past meetings about the desire to move to more sustainable energy technologies, that might be something to put in as a placeholder. Again, we don't have to outline specific projects, but if we don't in a petition process spell out and ask, we can't then go back to the BOA later to ask money to assist with it. So, it'd be something along the lines of, adding AWOS, technologies for fleet electrification, decarbonization of the airport, that type of stuff. So that's going to be an item I'll bring back to the commission at some point. And then there is a separate plan commission public hearing process that has to happen before we can formally approve that petition and send it to the BOA. So long way of saying that there'll be a couple of other items that we'll add to a separate BOA petition to cover stuff we didn't capture in 2023.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and nothing is showing up on my ADSB in right now for the next meeting, so I'll leave it at that. Commissioners, we then may stand adjourned. Appreciate your time and patience this evening. Thank you very much.